Artemis has said, we take you with us in the journey of teaching people something. What that thing is doesn't really matter. The art of teaching does not pertain to what you teach them, but how you teach people. So for instance, when I talk about teaching people some advanced digital skills, that's just a board on which we work. And the way we do it is transmittable between all kinds of knowledge. But we'll get into it because we don't have a lot of time. If my clicks work, yes. The first thing you have to do is create a powerful learning environment. This powerful learning environment is crucial to being able to teach your participants something. And we need a lot of factors to have a powerful learning environment. First of all, you need effective teachers. You need teachers that know what they're doing. They have to know which basis on which to learn people something and which principles to use in learning people something. This is something we will explore today. Furthermore, you need meaningful content. You have to teach them something that means something to those people. They have to get something out of it. If I were to teach you how to calculate the voltage or something, or the amperage or something, you would have nothing to say for it. That doesn't ring a bell with you. So it's not really something I can teach you in a meaningful way. Unless, of course, you're interested in those kind of things. And third of all, you need engaged learners. But also the learners need to be engaged in wanting to learn something, being active in this process, having the right mindset to learn something. So that is very, very important. And that is something the teacher doesn't always have full control over. But without those three factors, without that trifecta of elements, you can't have a fully functional learning environment. Now, there are some things you can do to promote this powerful learning environment. For instance, you have some conditions you can check off if you want to create this. The first is you have to create a safe environment. Each participant needs to feel safe to express themselves in this environment. For instance, if you're in a big room where you're feeling very belittled by all the things that are going on and the teacher is very strict, and you don't feel like you can safely say something to the teacher, then that is a very negative factor for learning. People won't be able to safely express themselves and express to the teacher from, sorry, I did not get this. Can you explain it a little bit further to me? Oh, very important. It also has to be a positive atmosphere. Same example, you have a question for the teacher, that you ask the question, but the environment, the other participants start laughing at you because you pose the question. That's not good. You need to be able to safely and positively ask your questions and learn. You need to feel as if it's a learning environment. The interaction is very important. As already said, you have questions, you have to be able to ask the questions. So also in this session, whenever you have questions, just interrupt and ask me the question. I'm very, very willing to make time for all of your questions. The participation is also very important. That's why today we have a portion where I will tell you things, and then there's a portion where you can do things, because you have to participate, you have to be active in this process. If it would be 1 hour of me telling you stuff, you would be very perplexed of all the data you got, and you wouldn't be able to process it in a decent manner. And also, of course, whenever possible, you have to adapt the things you're teaching to your target audience. Now, in this case, I don't know you. I'm very pleased to meet you, of course, but I don't know you. So I don't know what makes you tick, what you know, what you do not know yet. But in an ideal circumstance, I would know these things, and I would be able to adapt the things I'm saying to the target audience. So knowing which audience is in front of you is very important. And of course, last thing, reflection. Reflect. The most important thing about teaching something is to reflect on the things you're doing. Constantly, whenever you're teaching something, do they understand this? I can see your faces and I can think you understand what I'm talking about, but if I see wondering faces all around, I know I'm doing something wrong. And I have to reflect on my own behavior and translate it to another means of adapting these things to you. This is an entire other idea, meaning the zone of proximal development. Each of us knows a lot of things, but each of us also we also don't know a lot of things. And knowing we don't know a lot of things is very important. And with your students, it is very important that you know what they know and know what they don't know. For instance, I would be able to learn you how to do something very, very complex. Let's say I want to teach you how to create a smartphone app. Where do I start? What is the first thing I should do when starting to learn you how to build a smartphone app? Well, I should start with what you know. I would have to be able to interrogate you and see, what do you know? How do you know how to use? Do you know how to use an app to make an app? Do you know how to use an app? Do you know how to read? Do you know how to speak English? All these things are very important. So I have to find out what you can do without assistance. That is the first thing. And then I will learn you what is in the second part of the graph, the tasks that you can do with assistance. Because if I can teach you, if I can start by teaching you the things that you cannot do, even with assistance, you won't be able to do them. I have to learn you gradually and expand that zone of proximal development as we go. For this, I need to observe you. I need to watch at what you know, at what you can do. I need to question you. I just need to ask you. I need to investigate. What is the next step? What are the things that all people already have done? And I need to adapt the things I want to learn you according to the zone of proximal development. Of course, if you have a group of students, they don't have a common zone of proximal development. One student might be able to know how to build the app. He has the total package already in him. And another student barely speaks English. And another student knows how to use an app, but not how to make an app. So we have to find a common ground. The common ground is the basic factor, and we have to start from the person who knows the least and start building from there. But we can use the knowledge of the other participants in building that knowledge from that part. For instance, a student might not know how to use an app. Let another student explain to that student how it works, so they can participate and they can start learning together. And by explaining something you already know to someone else who doesn't know that yet, your own understanding about how it works improves. So that's a double win. Let's see. Now, each person is different. We already said that, but each person has a different learning style. And it's often a mix of these styles. For instance, I'm an oral learner, which means if I hear things, I'm very much more likely to get them, to grasp them, and to remember them than if I read it. Reading is not the best way for me to learn something. For instance, if I majored in history, I used to listen to history podcasts because I would grasp so many things from them. While reading them, I would grasp only 10% of it. Using this to your advantage when learning things is very important because by making a mix of all these different learning styles, you can come to an optimal learning situation. Don't just tell them, make it visual for people. Don't just tell them or make it visual, but also let them do things so they can experience it and they can learn in that fashion. Mixing these things is very, very important. Furthermore, the listening and the reading is, there's a baseline on which you can remember things. There's a graph, the Dale graph, the cone of experience, as he calls it, which if you tell someone something, they're only going to retain about 5% of what is told. Now, I'm an oral learner, so I retain more in this portion. But most people only remember about 5% of things you tell them. If you let them read something, that's sourced to about 10%. So about 10% of what you read, you can remember. If you show someone, seeing and hearing, showing them a video or something, that goes to 20%. But if they can observe someone doing it, for instance, making the app, I can show you a video about how to make the app on YouTube, about 20% will hang on. But if I'm going to show you myself, I'm going to do the actions myself, and you can see what I'm doing, they can remember about 30%. If we can start a discussion, start a dialogue about what we're doing, and people can ask questions and interact with me, that goes up to 50%. Half of what you tell them will remain in their brain, and they will take it with them later on. And then, by doing it themselves, they will have a serious bump in what they will learn. They listened to it, they saw it, they discussed it, and now they're doing. And by doing, they can see what the pitfalls are. They can see what they missed, and they can add to the things they missed by doing it. And then, of course, what I said earlier, by teaching someone the things you already know, you can still learn a lot. Because if I teach you how to do things, I'm going to go think a little bit further about it. I'm going to think about the extra steps that are needed. I'm going to rationalize the process. And in my mind, it will become a very standardized procedure by teaching this, by rationalizing this. So that's the basic steps on what you can use. And you can leverage this in your audience, in your teaching activities, by using those steps. Now, if people don't know how to use something, you can't go directly to step number 7, in which you say, okay, let's just do it. I'm not going to show you anything, just do it. That doesn't work. They're going to learn a lot, but they're going to get frustrated a lot too, because they don't know how to use these things, and there are a lot of learning opportunities you miss. So it is important that you more or less use the learning curve, follow the direction of the cone. To leverage it further, you're also going to incorporate some learning phases in each lesson you do. In each session you do, you're going to have these learning phases. There's the preparation phase, and the preparation phase can have multiple meanings. In the first session you do about a certain topic, you're going to have a motivation phase. You're going to tell them what you're going to learn and why you're going to learn it, and why it's important for them to understand this, why they are going to need this, why this is something that is meaningful for them. Why is it meaningful content? If it's the second or third or last session in a series, you're going to do something different. You're going to repeat. You're going to repeat the things that are have been seen in the previous session. Just a reminder of something. Last week we started with this, we learned that and that and that and that. You remember? Okay, remember, let's go further. You can tell them, but even better, you can ask them. What did we do last week? What did we see? What are the things we did? And then they can recall them for themselves. And you can ask some extra questions to see if everybody in the audience grasps the things that you learned the previous session. And if you notice some of them don't grasp it or just don't remember it, you have to reflect and think, maybe I didn't do it. Maybe my learning environment wasn't powerful enough. Maybe something in it was off. And then you can just repeat it. Then there's the second phase, the creative and presentation phase. And this is the phase in which I will, which you are in right now, which I'm learning new content, the theoretical phase, such as we say. We learn you how to use new things, we learn new content, we learn new dates in history, something like that. After this phase, which is pretty short, we go to the practice phase. And the practice phase is where you will actively try to grasp with the things we learned. For instance, if you're having a math class, this is the part of the class where you get the exercises and go for them yourself and try to figure out the exercises. This is the most important phase. And then there's the last phase, the performance phase, which is that's a test. That's the evaluation process about how to do it. Now, there doesn't need to be an evaluation phase in every class, but there always have to be a small phase in which you check if the practices are going good, if everyone understands what they're doing. And for instance, math class, they did calculations. You just go around and check with everyone, is everything okay? Do people understand what they're doing? Is there some who doesn't have a clue what they're doing? Then you can adapt for next session. Again, I'm gonna reiterate, we don't have a lot of time, but I'm very open to questions. So if there are any questions, just go ahead, put them in chat or stick up your hands, it's not a problem. I'm gonna drink and then we're go further. Okay, the 8 didactic principles. These are a set of principles which you can use when designing your learning materials and designing your lessons. There are 8 of them. Let's start at the top. Reality. This means if you're going to teach someone something, it has to be applicable to them in a real circumstance. For instance, maths. We're going to teach them maths again. You have to try to make it clear to them when and if they're ever going to use this. For instance, the Pythagorean theory, where you can calculate the triangles, you're going to have to say for what we can use it for instance, for placing a ladder or something like that. But make it real for them. Then activity. Make it so they can actively participate in this. Same thing, I can give you a lecture of an hour, just pumping you full of knowledge and just leaving it at that. No, I want to activate you in this process and I want to engage you in this process. Repetition, same thing we said earlier. Each class, we're going to repeat everything we learned the lesson before. Demonstrative, I'm going to show you things. I can just tell you things, but I can also show you things which are better. And I'm going to limit the amount of knowledge I'm going to transfer to you in one session. I can tell you everything there is to know about the team, but you would be gobsmacked. You don't know what to do with this knowledge. But if I can limit it in certain portions, small portions each time, you're going to learn a lot more. For instance, if I have a history class I'm teaching and I have some terms, historical terms that I want to teach my students, I limit it to about 2 to 3 terms per lesson, because otherwise they wouldn't know what is what. Then the next thing is integration. I'm going to try and integrate this knowledge into your being. It sounds very, very hazy, but this means we're going to try and by exercises and by repetition and by things like that, we're going to etch this knowledge onto already other things you have, knowledge you have inside of you. So you can learn more by having it fused with your other knowledge. This means that, for instance, you know about electricity from batteries. We're gonna etch the knowledge of electricity in the grid to the knowledge you already have of electricity in batteries, for instance. Motivation is very, very important, of course, because we saw in the earliest frame that we need engaged learners, and without motivation, you can't have engaged learners. We need very much attention to motivate them to participate actively in your lessons. And the last thing is individualization, and that's the hardest, because we have an audience. For instance, now we have an audience of 15 people, and each one of you is an individual. Each one of you has very own learning capabilities and a very different background. You will not learn at the same pace. Everyone learns at a different pace. And it would be best if I can individualize the knowledge I give to you. Of course, in an online environment, this is a lot harder than in real life. This is the taxonomy of Bloom. A taxonomy is the way in people learning new skills, in which way it is better. And this is a pyramid, with the baseline being remembering things. That's the baseline. Everyone can remember things. That's the basic idea of this. I can easily remember that the French Revolution was in 1789. I don't have to understand anything about it, just to know that that was the year that happened. Then understanding is the next level. I can understand what happened that year. I can understand why that is relevant. The next step is applying the knowledge I have and the knowledge I understand to something in a similar condition. Not the same, but similar. I can understand that water boils at 100 degrees, for instance. Applying it would be not to put my hand in boiling water, because I know it's 100 degrees and I will burn my hand. Then I can start analyzing these things. I can direct people things like, okay, I know water boils at 100 degrees. So if oil would be also 100 degrees, I would also burn my hand. Setting links to similar situations and identifying those relations of temperature, for instance. And then I can make judgments accordingly. So that's the evaluating, seeing what things are. And the top of the pyramid is creating new things. I understand what is happening. I can analyze it, but now I can use all this knowledge that I learned to create something entirely new, pertaining to something completely different, but with those basic knowledges. That's the top of what we can achieve. And then we're coming to our final bit of this introduction, and it's...
Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Can I have questions, or we have questions later on?
No, sure. Ask the question.
Yes, if we can go to the taxonomy before, because actually this is something I also did for another trainer project, and here is maybe a question for all of us, because according to this approach, we should first remember things, but according to the point of neuroscientists, they want us first to experiment things to know how they work. And it's completely the opposite, that we first have to put hands on. What do you think? What is the right approach? Because they are completely different. But for example, from my perspective, myself, remembering is very important, because I only understand these wider concepts.
If I can go into this, the taxonomy of Bloom, it's not a guideline. It's not something like this. You have to start with just remembering, and then you have to start with just. But it's a catalog of how students can apply the knowledge they have, and what is the pinnacle of where you're gonna go to. And the pinnacle is always the creating. That's the ultimate goal. So it's a set of goals instead of a place where to start. So experience something is a good place to start. And you would surpass the goals of remembering and understanding. You would experience something and go directly to applying and analyzing, which is okay, which is perfectly fine. But you also have to give them some basic understanding of what they're doing, but it's not necessary to start there. It is necessary to understand something before you can use it, but it's not necessary to start with learning how to understand it. You can start wherever.
Yeah, it's just confusing because according to neuroscientists, it would be applying, analyzing, understanding, remembering, and then even maybe before you have evaluation. Yeah. And then like the next creation when you got the whole concept. So I was still, I remember this really deeply because I'm still confused about this taxonomy. But for example, playing piano, if I try to play piano, I have to remember the notes and the song, because without this, the theory there is crucial.
Yeah,
so
correct.
It also depends maybe what you learn.
Correct.
What you are
correct.
Going, yeah.
But if you go in, let's take playing a musical instrument as an example. You can start playing it, but you wouldn't know what you're doing. So you wouldn't understand what it is you're doing. So remembering that, for instance, in a piano, that key makes that sound, that you have to remember that does that. Then understanding that it makes that sound when you press the key is also very important, because if you know something about that key and a sound is relevant, but you don't know you have to press the key to have the sound. So that's the understanding mechanism. And then you can go to applying and so you need the basics.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was very happy you brought this because I'm attached to this little bit. Thank you.
So the last thing, feedback or evaluation. I split them up into two different sections, the feedback section and the evaluation section, because they are not the same, but they are similar. Feedback, or in this case, assessment, is something you can do throughout the process. You can give feedback throughout the process, and you will always have to give positive feedback. It doesn't mean you have to say, oh, it's all great, it's all super, you're not making any mistakes. No, but you have to start your feedback if you're doing this right. I notice these and these things aren't going right at the moment, but you can improve them by doing this. That is a feedback. If you're saying, this sucks, this completely sucks, you can't do it, that's not feedback, because they can't learn anything from this. They need to be able to learn something from it and see new paths to improving themselves. It's also always individualized. You can't have feedback for an entire group of people. You're doing all well, but if you're going to do this, it would be better. It's different for all people. And this feedback you give, you always have to use a set of measures from which to give feedback. There is a golden standard which you have in your mind, and then you give the feedback according. This is good, but I think if you would do this and this and this, you would approach that golden standard I have in my mind. And you have to really give evidence about what is going wrong. You did this, it has to be different. Okay, different how? Well, different such as this and this and this things you can do. Be very clear about it. While in evaluation, you're gonna process something they learned and you're gonna quote it. We call it summative evaluation, and we're gonna give a judgment. You learned this. I asked you to repeat it for me. You weren't able to repeat it perfectly, so you get 7 points out of 10, because that and that and that things weren't active at the moment. It shows a lot of the shortfalls they have. They don't build, you just say what is wrong. That's the thing we're doing in evaluation. Doesn't mean that evaluation is bad. That it's another thing. There are places where you need evaluation, but there are more places where you need feedback. Feedback has to be often, Evaluation is sometimes and is now at the final end of the scope. Why would you give feedback? Because you want to monitor the process of a learning process. You want to monitor how someone is doing. And you want to motivate them to improve themselves. Because if people don't get feedback, they don't know how they're doing. So you have to tell them, okay, this is going well, this is going great. Don't pay any other attention to it, or don't put extra energy in it because it's super. But you need to direct your attention to this because this is something you can improve yourself on. How do you give this feedback? The best thing is to always start with something positive. I can see you're fastly learning how to do this, which is super. But I can also see that these things and these things are not quite mastered yet. You have to improve upon them by doing this and this and this. You also always have to talk about the objective and not the person. You can't do this because you don't know how to build this thing. That's a wrong message. I can see you're learning a lot of the things about this, but these things you're doing aren't up to snuff yet. You can improve. You have to be very specific about what is wrong or what can be improved upon, and you have to do it very often. If you give feedback once a year, it's too late. It's not enough. You have to do it very, very often. In each lesson, you have to do it several times per student. And always separate the opinions from the facts. I can tell you, for instance, in the class, there's a discussion, and one of the discussions is a student tells me the earth is flat. I can tell them, no, the earth is round. No discussion, the earth is round. In another class, they're painting a picture and I don't like the color they used for the face. I can tell them, I feel that the color of the face is not the one I would use. That is how I feel. But it's not a fact. I can't state it as a fact. I can't tell them that is the wrong color because it might not be, but I don't feel the thing for the color. So focus on what is fact and focus on what is opinion and differentiate the two. Then evaluation. When you're going to evaluate someone, it is important to pose SMART targets. And it's a letter word. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. If you want to ask a question on an exam, it has to be very specific. There can't be two answers to a question because then you didn't ask the right question. There has to be one specific answer possible. Otherwise, it's a bad question. You have to be able to measure. For instance, if you ask someone to make, let's see, give your opinion about this. Yeah, that's a bad question because it's their opinion. You can't measure it. If that opinion doesn't correspond with your opinions, that's too bad. You just asked you for the opinion. Make it measurable and make it attainable, not too much all at once. And of course, relevant to the things they learned, to the things they know, and make it time-based, so not too long. Make it, for instance, if you have a course of 40 lessons, do an evaluation after 10 lessons and not on the end of the 40 lessons. So this was a lot of theory in a short amount of time. I'm very sorry to push all this information on you, but now we're going to start using it. And what we're going to do is in a few minutes, we will divide you into two groups in breakout rooms. And Artemis will join one group and I will join another group. And you will be given a word, a technical term that you need to explain to the other group, not to each other, to the other group.
Okay. So I think I have to share the screen now. Let me do my screen sharing. Let me see. Okay. So I have here for you one picture. And I don't know if you can see correctly. Let me make this Big. Can you see these pictures? So this, yes, so this is our president. The lady is our president and meeting the Czech president. What do you think about these pictures? Do you see any differences or?
A difference in these two pictures?
In the right picture, she's snarling more.
Yeah, that's right.
The face expression is different.
Yeah.
Christine, I feel that you want to say something, but we can't hear you. Is that...
I would say the right lady is more angry than the left, I think. Maybe.
I think they are discussing a very difficult topic.
Probably COVID. Yeah, it's a recent picture. So yeah, these pictures are almost like you have to really look deeply what's going on. There is like, it's not to find 8 differences on the picture, but it's like one difference, which is true. And I show you why. Because this picture is different than this. I mean, this is the same, but we have here the true. So you cannot read Slovak, but according what they say, the left right is the original, and the right one is from Facebook.
Okay.
And they said the right one, this one, the expression like discusses or not being very friendly is actually made. It was also on TV, and the photographer commented that really he showed them the pictures he made and that this is not a picture he ever created. And also I can show you a proof that it was actually, as you can see here, it was a hoax. So this is the real demonstration of how actually somebody shared it on the social media, and also saying how like they are not very friendly, how arrogant she is, which is completely false, which is not true, and people read it. And this is the example that we actually analyze or try to understand the deep fake. So this is what happened in the highest level of people, of the politicians in our countries, and it's very hard to recognize because it's almost as a picture that was created, but you really have to analyze with the photographer. So this is our way we wanted to describe this term to teach you. Maybe some other members of my group can tell something more. Yes, so this is the real example that just happened 2 weeks ago in Slovakia. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a very good example to show how we can try to influence people and make them think or believe or speak or spread news in a certain way to manipulate people.
Helga, there was another side to your point, because Helga also wondered, like, can there be positive sides to this technique, to a deep fake? And see, we would like to invite the group to share some ideas about how this could be also a positive technique. So if anybody wants to shout out some ideas. That's right, Helga, that's your question.
Should I explain?
Well, or if, you already had ideas, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know if everybody knows what we mean by that.
I think I do. I think I can think of an example which is positive in this circumstance.
Okay.
For instance, I'm a bit of a movie freak, and the last few years we have seen some movies where people acted in them who are actually deceased. So people don't live anymore, but are still acting in movies because they use this technology to replicate their face.
Okay.
That's a really good example.
Mm-hmm.
Some other remarks?
Well, in the Netherlands, I've seen this in comic TV. They use faces and put it on in another story, and it can be very brutal to the real people, and it's a good way to make fake news.
Now, we're gonna cut this a little bit short. If there are any people who like to give some feedback on how they explained this difficult matter to us, go right ahead.
Well, I think the example is very clear. I had to, at the start, I was looking, what's this all about? What's the subject? But soon I didn't knew what the subject was, and then it was a good explanation to me. But I didn't know in the first stage, what do I learn, or what should I see or not.
I didn't go through the Bloom's taxonomy. I took it from the other way, just look, observe, then analyze, and then I explain you. So I took it from more just neuroscience way to learn and teach. So
what you did very, very well was to motivate the students by setting an example which they have to gather for themselves what is different. So it's very motivating to start from that kind of pictures. So that's very well done in a very, very short period of time. So excellent.
Perfect.
The second group, I will show the sites, which we're going to explain, and someone can just take over and explain.
Explore our
Not all at once.
Well, I will start, and the other people can just go on if they want to. We show you when you were at school. You learned a lot. For instance, for these subjects: physics, chemistry, math, biology, and then it stays with only the theory. And the PET Colorado, it's a program designed by the University of Colorado to show you how the theory works in practice. And we will show you an example in the biology sphere. And here you see, you can measure yourself about the pH value. And for instance, we've got some water in this box, and there's also there's also a measure tool, and it shows water has a pH value of 7, and we call that neutral because water is neutral. And in this tool, you can also show, if you put another thing, for instance, hand soap in it. What do we expect? Hand soap has a pH of 10. And if you, then this is not an acid, this is a basic, and it shows also in the measurement tool. And you can also try to find an acid product. It's not the dream cleaner, but orange juice, for instance, seems to be more acid. And there are a lot of tools in this program. the PET Colorado. For all these things, for biology, also math. So this is only one example, and there are thousands of them in this tool, just to explain the theory you learned for at school. So it can be interesting for people from the secondary schools, but also if you want to know something about it, or even students from university, there's a very interesting tool, and most positive of it is you can do it yourself. Choose a subject and try it yourself how it works. This is a short introduction of the PET Colorado.
I liked how you explained it by showing.
Yes.
Are there any additions or any?
But I would like to do it to show it, and so you can do it yourself. That's the idea of the tool. Everyone should do it himself.
I think it's very good tool. I'm going to send it to my sister, who has kids in the school. Okay, maybe it is not in Slovak, but in English they can manage. So I think it's very nice tool. Amazing one.
Webinar, wie man heute so sagt. Bis später.
Okay. Any feedback on the way it was brought to you?
No, I think it was good.
I think it was very understandable and a good demonstration.
Great.
Now I would also let you use the tool yourself, but that's not possible this time.
Yeah, so the time span is very, very short. We really only could give you the minimal amount to start explaining something. And of course, it would be nicer for everyone to really do something, because I feel the urge of also the explainers to say like, yeah, you should now apply it yourself. This means you have all listened very well to what Jeff was explaining, because at a certain phase, it's necessary for participants to do it themselves in order to learn it. Our time has run up. I would like for us to be able to be here for 1 more hour, but I can assure you the learning material that will sprout from this Train the Trainer is a questionnaire that we can use in company to determine the zone of proximal development, so as to make sure that the training that will take place in duos, which is a goal in the Erasmus Plus project, is efficient and relevant. And also for all the participants here today, we will make sure that we edit a video version of what we have seen, and we will send you the link to the PET Interactive Solutions website and all other theories that Jeff has explained to us today.
And I can very much suggest you just check out the PET website. It's awesome. You can tinker with all kinds of things and tons of fun.